I know there's been a lot going on around the world and here at home, and we probably need to talk about it. We've taken a break from these lives for a little bit, and I'm ready to get back in and jump into the topic. Quite honestly, I think I burnt out on the COVID news and talking about COVID every single time and was really waiting for something different or more exciting to come along. But we'll jump into the headlines. There's a lot of information out this week. We will touch on COVID briefly in just a moment. We'll take your questions as well. And remember to get into detailed conversations, join my tribe, join the Taz tribe. I'll be headed over to my private Facebook group after this, where we get into questions in a lot more depth and into a lot more detail and explore topics that you guys are all interested in and curious about. But let's get to the news of the day. So, leading the news, I said I wasn't going to talk about COVID, but leading the news is information about the Astrazeneca vaccine. How many people have seen that? That's all over the news. The data they used to push the vaccine through was outdated. They have 48 hours to get new information in. So we will see what they come up with and see how that goes. And it's just really unfortunate because what that does is essentially people already are very hesitant about the vaccine, right? They're already really nervous. I'm going to adjust this to make sure we're getting power here, but they're already super nervous about it. And when something like this happens where people aren't getting the data that they need, it just doesn't help from a trust standpoint. So anyhow, how did you guys feel about that? Any thoughts on that particular piece of the puzzle, not getting information in about not getting accurate data in? So the AstraZeneca vaccine is not being widely used throughout the United States yet. It is being used in Europe. It's also the vaccine that has had some reported cases of clotting and blood clots and that type of thing. So that was one thing that caught my attention today when I was going through the headlines is, just how I think this is why we all get nervous with vaccinations. But the good news is that there are independent boards that evaluate everything independent from the pharmaceutical company themselves. And they are looking at these vaccines, evaluating it. So it's this independent board that actually had oversight on AstraZeneca and said, hey, your data is not accurate. Please submit new data. So that's actually should be comforting to everybody that there's some of these checks and balances in place with these different vaccinations. One more study on COVID, and then we'll move on to a different topic, I promise. Vitamin D. So we talked about this all through kind of the thick of the pandemic as to how vitamin D and your immune system was so related, so interconnected, right? Well, here is another study, and I love this because I love the headline. Check this out. It says supplements. The word supplement. So many times you hear the word supplement shot and people say you don't need supplements. They're unnecessary. How many people have heard that before? I hear that all the time from patients. I go to different places and hear, oh, you don't need supplements. If you're a healthy eater, you're getting everything you possibly need. Have you guys heard that? You can nod yes or raise your hand, but I know you've heard some of this stuff before. So what we want to do now is highlight the study that is talking about supplementation and how it may protect those with low vitamin D levels from severe COVID-19. Now, again, this is something that I felt like I beat to death over the last 9 to 12 months of the pandemic. But listen to this statement from the co-author. Given how common vitamin D deficiency is in the world, and I know we have people from all around the world join us for these lives, but given how common vitamin D deficiency is in the world and in the United States, we believe that this research is highly relevant right now and shows that vitamin D supplementation can prevent inflammation. Everyone hear that? Prevents inflammation and other respiratory diseases. So they studied about 124 adult patients with low vitamin D levels that were measured up to 90 days before their admission with COVID-19. They compared it to patients who were supplemented with at least 1,000 units of vitamin D to those who were not, and tried to determine who was ventilated or who had a poor outcome. And they found that patients who were supplemented were less likely to be mechanically ventilated or to die following admission. So how's that for supplements actually making a difference? And here's the deal with supplementation. Everything is not necessary. More is not better. You want to be targeted. You want to be precise with what you're taking. You want to understand why you're taking it and really develop a plan that's really targeted at your needs. So So many people will read a headline or look at something and go buy supplements. I have patients that come in and they dump out an entire bag of supplements on my desk. And here's what we really are trying to talk about. We want to be cautious with supplementation just as we are with medications. We want that integrative approach. We want that middle road approach where you're doing supplements, but they're targeted to you. And you've taken the time and energy to understand your chemistry and where those holes need to be plugged. So let's take me, for example. Somebody like me runs chronically low in iron. I have a chronic fat deficiency. So the omega-3s, iron, B vitamins, those are things that I have to hold on to and continue to take kind of pretty consistently. Like, of course, I can skip a day here and skip a day there, but those meet and match my deficiencies. They may not be right for you. So this is why when we think about the medical model, we really want to expand it so that we are able to advise our patients on the right things for them to take, including supplements. So exciting study about supplementation, supplementing with vitamin D level, connection to better outcomes with COVID-19. What I've seen in practice, targeted supplementation helps with all kinds of conditions. But again, that's a conversation that we've got to have based on what's going on with you. All right. So I thought that was good news, exciting news. And I wanted to switch gears for a second because there are all these interesting headlines that are coming out this week that I think we're not paying attention to because we're so kind of caught up in all the other stories, right? And we do need to talk about gun violence as well. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But for all my female patients, so many women come to me and they're so frustrated with their weight. I don't know if that's you or if you've had that experience before, but this is a study talking about how sleep and weight are connected, especially after menopause. There's such a connection there. And specifically, they're finding that menopause-related weight gain is thought to be caused just by the withdrawal of estrogen. But estrogen is not the only contributing factor. This is from the Endocrine Society. They're saying another common symptom, which affects 50% of women in menopause, is a lack of sleep, which is also linked to changes in metabolism and increasing the risk of weight gain. So is everybody out there getting a good solid 6 to 8 hours of consistent sleep at night? Yes or no? So if you're not, maybe that's the place to begin and really look at your sleep quality if you're trying to lose weight. Because I think when you're not sleeping, we know we have all kinds of implications of that: high cortisol levels, insulin levels that go up. In fact, remember, I'm still wearing it. I keep forgetting this thing is on. It's so tiny. I'm wearing this Libra glucose monitor and just tracking my blood sugars. And it was fascinating to me, some of the variations I've seen, and I've talked about this. When I went on vacation, my blood sugars, even though I was eating foods that maybe weren't the healthiest for me, were lower than when I'm here. And when I don't sleep, I wake up with a much higher blood sugar than when I do get a good night's sleep. So again, a relationship there for sure on sleep and weight, especially after menopause. So anyone watching me who is over 45 or so, please make sure you're getting a consistent and decent night's sleep. And I think that's a huge factor in not just menopause and brain health and in so many other pieces of this puzzle too. All right, these next two articles I found really interesting. Let's do this one first. So there, again, here's another, we should call this episode Mythbusters, right? We've talked about the myth of not needing supplements, the myth of COVID-19, severity of COVID-19 not being impacted by your immune system. Let's talk about another myth. This is about the fact that bioidentical hormones are not necessary. So many people tell me, or are struggling to find a hormone therapy that really works for them. And in this particular study, also from the Endocrine Society, it's talking about thyroid hormones. So again, you've heard of thyroid hormone, you know where the thyroid is. Remember, Friday, we're doing a webinar on Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an inflammatory condition of the thyroid. But remember, the thyroid is responsible for so many different aspects of health. It's responsible for your hair, your skin, your metabolism, cognitive changes, for constipation, gut health, so many different things. But when the thyroid starts to peter out, or you have an autoimmune or an inflammatory condition of the thyroid, then in turn we know that the body starts to function very differently. It makes you feel like a shadow of your former self. Well, conventionally, levothyroxine, Synthroid has been used to treat the thyroid. In this most recent article from the Endocrine Society, we're hearing how treatment of hypothyroidism, which is from an underactive thyroid gland, should be individualized. I love that. It should be individualized and consideration should be given to alternatives as first-line therapy. So again, it's not just about doing Synthroid or levothyroxine, but it's also about getting in of some of these bioidentical or desiccated thyroid hormones like Armour, like Nature-Throid, which have a T4, T3 combo, and you can personalize it to kind of what you're doing there. So that's what we've got going on there. I'm going to turn off comments because some of them are not appropriate and I don't appreciate it. But if you do have medical questions, put it in the comments and I will take a look at that in just a moment. All right. So I thought that was interesting. The next one is about PCOS. And I've talked about PCOS before, polycystic ovarian syndrome. Here's a shocking finding. PCOS may be in men as well. How could that be? I know you're asking me that because men don't have ovaries, but here is the thought. New research is suggesting, this is also from the Endocrine Society, that men can develop the characteristics of polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a metabolic disorder that historically we've thought about affecting women. And what they found at this particular annual meeting of the Endocrine Society this year, that men have the same sort of metabolic profile as women with PCOS, but at this time it affects their testosterone rather than it affecting the estrogen and the ovarian production of hormones. So fascinating to me. But they're saying men who have genetic risk factors for PCOS face an increased risk of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, as well as male pattern baldness. So guys, this is like light bulb stuff because so many women struggle with this, but we think it's a female issue with ovarian hormone production being involved. But now we're finding that this could be a male issue as well. So if you are a male and you've got male pattern baldness, you're having obesity, weight gain, cardiometabolic issues, you may have PCOS, but the male version of it. And historically, at least in our practice, when we're trying to treat things from an integrative and holistic approach, it's a lot about healing the gut, balancing gut bacteria, reducing inflammation, and then giving the nutrients and hormone support to get everything back in balance. So it's a very delicate kind of dance to get this where it needs to be. But I was shocked to see that even men might have PCOS. So that's the news of the day. Everything from Astrazeneca, vitamin D, to bioidentical thyroid hormone replacement and PCOS in men, and sleep affecting menopause and weight gain in women. All of these are things that have answers, have solutions. Again, it's taking the time to have that holistic approach to put the pieces of the puzzle together to be able to isolate out answers that work and make a difference for the long haul. So that's my breaking news of today. If you guys have questions, let me see if anyone had questions that I can answer quickly. But if you do have questions, you want me to go deeper into any topics, then make sure you join the tribe where I'm about to head over there and we're going to talk about Hashimoto's, weight gain, candida. We have a lot of questions about those topics. So I'll see you guys over there in just a minute. Have a great night.